World, fifth edition, fifth week we've been doing this. So I'll wait a few minutes before we get started.
Good morning, Dee. Good morning.
Grace, you're a little bit faint.
Faint? Okay.
That's better.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Morning.
Grace, are you still doing the virtual sanctuary?
Yes, I am daily. So I'm going there at 9:30 and then coming back. Yes.
That's lovely. I'd like to join again. I hope they're going well.
Oh, yes. We're enjoying it.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, look at that. We've got Ari and we've got one of my nephews from Germany is joining us. Wonderful. Hello, Ari. Thank you for joining us. Do you have Luna with us today?
Yeah, she's around.
Awesome.
Fantastic. And lovely to have you join us again, Katie.
Hi everyone. Hope everyone's well.
Hi, Shannon.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Lovely to see you, Paul, and everyone.
Yeah, and we're just going to wait for a few minutes.
Yep.
Before we get started in week 5 of the episodes of the More Beautiful World Our Hearts Know Is Possible, which we've been calling somewhat stories around the global campfire, telling each other stories of the more beautiful world and telling ourselves stories of the more beautiful world.
Hey guys.
Hiya.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Hey,
Hi. Hey, how are you? I'm in Hamburg, Germany. Hi, first time. And,
Hi, Ben.
Hi, nice to meet you.
And you, and welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you could go on mute just while we're waiting for people to start, that'd be great.
Welcome, Alina.
Oh, thank you. Oh, hi. I didn't know anybody. I'm putting my tripod on.
So, Mark, should we get started, do you think?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, great. So, welcome everybody. I'm in the Cotswolds in the UK on a lovely sunny day. There's quite a lot of bird song in the garden, which is nice. And just to kind of remind ourselves, we started, this is something that started at Esalen last year, where Mark and I and Grace, Duke, Catherine did a workshop with Charles Eisenstein on the More Beautiful World Our Hearts Know Is Possible. And at that time, for me, I think the future felt like it was quite far away, that there might come a point at which kind of this kind of future we sort of somewhat dreamed of might come around. And somebody said to me earlier today that the future arrived early, because it's almost like when things started to change as they are, in all the ways that they are, I was kind of like, I'm not quite ready. Maybe a week on Wednesday would be better than today. But, you know, we're in some journey and we're trying to work out what that is. And we have a sort of theme for each of the live streams of More Beautiful World. And the theme for this week is initiation, which is something that's getting spoken about quite a lot. I've been listening to Michael Meade, the mythologist, quite a lot, because I found his, partly his voice, but also the stories he tells, just really kind of grounding and settling. And I'm tuning out of the news as much as I possibly can, while staying a little bit informed, and tuning into these other things. And then, you know, Charles Eisenstein's talks about initiation. And then I also kind of thought this morning about this, and then we're going to start off, but, you know, the British Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, kind of nearly died through the virus. And I thought maybe this is going to initiate him and change him. And then there was an item on the news this morning, and I was lying in bed listening to it, and they said, there's something weird going on with Boris. He's this kind of country home recuperating, and people are reporting that his behavior's strange, that it's kind of, he's softer, he seems to kind of putting different things. It's like there's kind of, they can't quite get their heads around it. So I'm hopeful that he's been through some kind of initiation, and maybe that will inspire other leaders to go through their own journey of initiation. So I think, Rose, you're going to start us off with a poem today.
Hi everyone. Yeah, so I didn't actually know that the theme was initiation, but actually that works quite nicely, because in a way, hopefully these words that I've written are something of a kind of sum up of the More Beautiful World, or the way I see it anyway. Something that's something that runs through the thread of it is the idea that there's lots of parts of this world. There's the things we see on the news and the pain and the grief, and that is there, and that's important. But there's also so much beauty that we don't always tend to highlight, or maybe we don't tend to remember as much. And so it's about that balance. That's what the poem's about. So I wrote it for this group, and with you. Cracked and oozing, fallen and broken, is this our world? Crying and hungry, unjust, severe, is this our world? Seeping, exhausted, hollow, painful, is this our world? Noisy, busy, breathless, fragmented, is this our world? The fires, the heartache, the losses, the pain, is this our world? The stresses, the hardship, the moments of fear, this is our world. But does this paint the whole picture? Is this the end of our poem? Does it tell the whole story, or is there more to be sown? What if Shakespeare had finished his play on Act 1? Or Yeats had put his pen down before he was done? What if Fitzgerald had left us not knowing Gatsby's fate? Or Monet took a lunch break and made us wait? What if Martin Luther had stopped after I have a dream? Now you are starting to get the theme. Part 1 of our story is true through and through, but now comes the beauty where there is rhyme too. We looked at our world, but just at one part. So now let's go back and revisit the start. For every loss and grief and all of the pain, there is always a shred of hope that remains. If you ask anyone of regrets, they would say, yes, that was hard, but would I have gotten here today? The story of the bad thing that happened again, it's there, yes, yes, but what happened then? Was that the end? Is that all that we get? Or can you feed us with more and let us reset? Tell us tales of people who showed strength today, the repressed who decided to no longer obey, the countries at war who were ready to fight, who put down their weapons, which took the most might. The little boy whose father felt tired that night, who tucked his dad in and said, let's not fight. A family whose Sunday was spent in bed with tea cakes and newspapers that never got read. The old lady whose neighbour knocked every day just to check in, say good morning as she went on her way. The mother who had had no sleep that night, whose baby squeezed her finger and made everything right. The woman who lives at number 4, who baked cookies for her neighbour she'd not met before. The light of the morning when a new day has begun, bringing in hope where we felt there was none. We know that there's pain in this world every day that's important and real and can't be shut away. But within that, there's beauty that our hearts know is true. And when we speak of it, it grows as that is beautiful too. There's colour to be found in everyone. Whether light shades or dark shades, we're all under one sun. And when we sit together, connected as one, The world takes a breath. Its job is done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rose. That was so beautiful. Grace, and then we like to start with some music or a poem, and that was really special, Rose. And we also like to start with a ceremony, a short ceremony. And Grace, I think you're going to take us through today's initiation into this call.
Speaking of taking a breath, thank you, Rose. The world taking a breath, each one of us taking a breath. Taking a breath in honor of Earth Day. And rightfully so, we are initiated through the breath. Let's begin then to tune in together into this present moment. And how do we do that? But through the breath itself. You may wish to close your eyes or have a gentle gaze, allowing yourself to become present by breathing, taking a breath, guiding it down into your belly, allowing your belly to relax and open and relax and open and relax and open. Receiving the gift of this moment, the gift of living, the gift of being here on this planet, on Mama Earth, feeding us, all of it free. Water, air, soil, fire, minerals, love, living us into existence, loving us into existence, birthing us again in this moment, and sustaining our life, breathing it right here, right now, into our belly. Breathing it here. What did you say yes to in your life by being here? What are you saying yes to in your soul, in your body, in your vision that has brought you here today? You did not come here by chance. Being here is a choice. What are you saying yes to? What are you initiating yourself into through this breath? What are you saying yes to in your life? And with this breath, let us open deeply in our bellies and in our hearts to Mama Earth and to one another. Opening, receiving the gift of the moment, being here together, initiating ourselves into the more beautiful world that is emerging through us, becoming through us with each other. Breathing it in, breathing it out, imprinting all that we touch, Because initiation is not only something we receive, it is something we give, receiving through the inhale, exhaling. Then we imprint and initiate all things we touch. Connecting with the gift of this life, this gift of co-creativity within us together. With the next breath, then open your eyes and see who else has said yes to being here, to being initiated. And we can begin. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Grace. So today's theme is the sense and the stories of initiation. And it's great to have Ari with us today. And Ari was part of the experience we had with Charles Eisenstein last year, has been involved in the More Beautiful World live stream and since then, and is a very gifted filmmaker and has been involved in making some films and questions lately. And Ari, is there anything you want to say before we play your film Initiation?
Well, just at the well, thank you for having me and for sharing it, and thank you, Grace, for that beautiful and thank you for the poem. And I mean, it's such a good lead up to it. Also, put you in the mindset and in the heart space to receive it. So the only thing is that the first episode, this is the second episode, Initiation. The first episode is really came about because I had a lot of questions when this first started. And I remembered some person in some interview having said that, you know, it's really that they went to a workshop or something where all they did was ask good questions and refine those questions, and they never answered the questions. And it was like a 2-day thing of questions. And I thought, wow, maybe I should just start asking questions to the people I know, to my extended, to my friends, to my collaborators, to people that I, you know, look up to and respect people's opinion, or just someone that I want to hear from. And so I just started booking these like 10-minute little sessions where we would just video chat, and I would ask the question about questions. What questions should we be asking ourselves right now? And that's what kind of led to the series together. And so the second episode just is about initiation, and you'll see it speaks for itself in terms of the content, but it was the next obvious move after having asked questions and having gotten, you know, 40 or 50 really amazing questions worth asking. So I recommend you check that one out also, because that's kind of the lead up to this one, but they can all be seen in any order.
Great, thank you, Ari. And Mark, I think you're right.
Just for 1 minute, everybody in the world recognizes that what we were doing wasn't working.
You know, an existential crisis or a personal crisis is when the story that you tell yourself about yourself is no longer convincing.
It's a collective shake-up, wake-up crisis.
And so the lesson that we're learning right now is that you have no control.
This is hard. I mean, this is hard, you know? And then to say, and now what?
The second episode emerged as I was weaving together some of the most interesting things I'd heard so far. And a grand theme emerged, which is this collective passage that we're all experiencing. So it's not just what are the questions that we're asking, but how do we open ourselves up to new answers, new possibilities, new ideas, new ways of being and knowing in the world. And given it's a historic event, the best place to start is through mythology.
I think it is a collective rite of passage, which is a really unusual thing to see. The majority of people in the world separated from everything they know as normal. Separation is the first stage of initiation. So we invest ourselves in culture, in identity, in status, in sports figures, in whatever it may be. And at this moment, all the games are falling away. And so we are facing the bankruptcy of our own frailty, our own mortality, and sitting with it.
A lot of the things that make people despair are the independent sense of your own personal suffering. But this is universal. There is something oddly heartwarming about the communal nature of that.
There's so many really extreme experiences that are unfolding right now, people losing relatives, losing loved ones. So there's just like attending to that reality, and what is coming out the other side of this is actually something that we actually desperately need as a species and as a society.
These are going to be major cultural shifts that are going to ask us to negotiate a lot between the individual rights and freedoms and what normal is, and what the possibilities are, and what the common good is.
What is possible, what we can do to help the most people and bring the most people to the center of the conversation. When we see the world through the eyes of gift, through the eyes of gratitude, through the eyes of understanding our purpose here as more than to survive and reproduce or to maximize self-interest, but understanding that we're here for a reason. The good of one is the good of all.
You know, if we have no relationship to the land, if we have no relationship to our community, and we barely even have a relationship to each other, how can we be healthy? And how can we resist the pathogen?
How do we not become the overdriving force on the planet, but become more of an interlinking unit of connection and relationship so that we can utilize our resources properly?
Where is that meeting point between the depth of the knowledge of the sort of indigenous world and then the bleeding edge of science?
So 100 years from now means nothing to finance, which therefore means nothing to politics, which therefore means nothing to our media and nothing to the signals that we receive. And yet we know that the danger window for our society is about the next 100 years. We get past the next 100 years, we'll probably be okay. But we have a fair chance of crashing the ship of advanced civilization in the next 100 years because we are myopically driven by money on money return, debt, and status through things.
The second stage of initiation is ordeal, challenge. We've left the world that we used to know. It's gone. We're not going back to that world. Everybody's having to figure out how to manage their life in a completely different space, not just place.
Will we go back to our old ways? Yeah. Will we forget? Humanity does, and we'll move on until the next event. But I think there will be a huge part of society that this will leave an indelible mark on the spirit that leaves them halfway between an answer and a question. And asking, you know, is there something more than the system that we've all become such slaves to? And I think there'll be so many new things and new ways that will emerge from this chaos.
This will end. We don't know when, but we're going to get through it. And we will come out the other side wiser. And yes, things will be, you know, fundamentally different probably for a lot of us.
I really hope that this can be a time that breaks our heart open so wide that we remember where we come from. That we remember that we're all indigenous of this planet. That we're all in this together. And that this illusion that we're separate, that we are actually in control of what's happening next, that we can kiss it goodbye with a prayer.
What's interesting is that I met Jerónimo also at SLN, where I met all of you on the core group here and at this Charles retreat last year. He just happened to be there on an artist not artist residency, but a residency of sorts. And we just struck up a really amazing conversation one night, and I've just stayed with him, and he's talking about a special human being. I mean, that's like 1/10 of what he said in our 15 minutes. And it's, yeah, everything he was saying was music to my ears, gold, you know. But it was a great finisher. Felt like a great function.
Thank you, Ari. Over to you, Mark.
Yeah, you know, I also met Geronimo in the tubs there. I think when I first met you, Ari, and there were so many experiences that have happened. And when we think about initiation and that stripping away everything and getting down to what it's all about, for me, I'm sitting here on today, the 50th anniversary of Earth Day starting, and remembering I was 12, and that year, 1970, was really important to me. I also traveled to Japan on a school trip and went to Osaka, the World's Fair, where it was all about man's creativity and mastering technology. And I went from Osaka to Hiroshima to see man's ability to destroy. And that at 12 years old was pretty impressionable, and opened my heart up. And at the same time that year was this thing called Earth Day, and the notion of ecology and the environment was coming along. And suddenly I was taking some of the first classes in college about our environment and the ecology and design sciences, and learning about Buckminster Fuller and living with somebody who just worked with Bucky and produced the World Games. And my head was exploding. And this was my initiation to what was coming, and anticipating and seeing now, looking back over my shoulder, this story unfold of this. It's not necessarily about our own personal initiation, but our cultural, and that with which we are engaged over a longer period of time that's harder to see, especially when we're younger. And yet when we're younger, it seems like we can see so far. It's like everything is possible and doable. And then we get to this place where we look back over our shoulder and say, maybe that's what it was about. And then you bump up against it and you go, I know nothing. I still know nothing. And you feel like you're starting all over again on that sense of initiation and learning and unlearning. And I'm just so honored to be here with you all, and welcome Ganga Devi, who shared with us her thoughts on, through the Buckminster Fuller Institute's recent gatherings. And when she responded to the sense of initiation that seemed in context of our last discussion Friday, her heart opened and just shared. And I just thought it was so heartwarming, and we connected thereafter. And Catherine and I met with her yesterday and had this wonderful talk, and invited her and her offering to sit with us and reflect upon this notion of sense of initiation during these days of Earth Day and being present together in community. So, Ganga Devi.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, it's a real pleasure to be here with all of you, and so many new faces, people I've never encountered before. There's definitely a sense of exhilaration to be in this space with you all in this moment, and I'm excited to share some of my thoughts. I've been working on a longer piece that I'm writing on this very topic, which is why I was so excited last Friday when Mark brought in the question of initiation. I'm really excited to hear from all of you. So I will be hopefully brief and pithy, but I hope that what I'm about to share will just kind of flesh out the depth and breadth of what we are all experiencing and reflecting on together. So I've been in contemplation around the topic of initiation for many years as I've studied anthropology and religion really in depth, but never more so than, you know, the last many weeks, as have collectively been entering into this initiation, as we're all aware. But also on a personal level, I got married the first week of the shutdown, and just like entering into that experience of initiation for me very consciously over the last year, preparing for that moment, that day, and then having the whole world shift around. And the thing that stayed consistent was the ritual, was the ceremony, was the actual initiation. So it's very much in my mind and in my heart lately. So from a mythic and anthropological level, you know, we can understand that initiations, ceremonies, rites of passage, they all include a few keynote elements that, you know, we can continuously return to. They involve entering into a liminal space, which is an environment that is in between worlds, in which your identity can dissolve, in which time moves differently, and in which the possible unfolding paths are many and multiplying. They also pretty much always involve an experience, an encounter with death in many different forms, and they require choice. We have to choose to enter into the new world, into the new identity, into the new form of being, and we have to say, I do. We have to make that conscious choice. But not just in the human world. In the non-human living world, we all are also given many different models of initiation. And the probably most poetic and potentially most overused one is that of the caterpillar becoming the butterfly. That experience of metamorphosis, like we all know about it to some degree, and it may feel a little bit of a tired metaphor for some people, but probably not people who are gathered here today. But for decades, you know, people like us gathered here today, we've been referencing this metamorphosis, especially returning to the idea of the microscopic element, the awakening of the imaginal cells, as they are incidentally called, but it's so poetic. They're called imaginal cells, and the cells that in the body of the caterpillar that stir independently, they awaken in their kind of isolated part of the body of the caterpillar, far away from one another, to begin to initiate a change. And they only begin to awaken when the caterpillar has become so possessed by its impulse to feed that it has all but consumed the very substrate, the plant on which it lives. When this consumption has become enough, and enough imaginal cells have awakened, that is when the initiation stage begins. And for, you know, decades we've been talking about this, and now it feels like, okay, now the initiation has begun. Now we've begun to erect the walls, to withdraw into the chrysalis, into the cocoon of transformation now, where the boundaries are raised and the dissolving can happen in some degree of safety. The caterpillar's life turns into a swampy state of goo, and it's really like becomes liquid, and I can feel all around me with my own identity, with relationships and systems that I'm a part of, and certainly on institutional levels, there is a liquefaction, there's a goopy kind of state that's happening, and I'm imagine that I'm not alone. So that's where I want us to kind of contemplate together a little bit today. Mary Oliver, who I know a poem from her was offered last week, bless her forever. She wrote a poem that so beautifully describes this state of initiation and offers us a glimpse of what lies beyond it. So this poem is called Crossing the Swamp. And if you'd like to close your eyes and really feel yourself in the chrysalis, in whatever enclosure you find yourself in right now, and allow yourself to really relax, maybe get a little comfy and cozy, and feel yourself in this swampy state. Here is the endless, wet, thick cosmos, the center of everything. The nugget of dense sap, branching vines, the dark bird faintly belching bogs. Here is swamp. Here is struggle, closure, pathless, seamless, peerless mud. My bones knock together at the pale joints, trying for foothold, finger hold, mind hold, over such slick crossings, deep hip holes, hummocks, that sink silently into the black, slack earth soup. I feel not wet so much as painted and glittered with the fat, grassy mires, the rich and succulent marrows of earth. A poor, dry stick, given one more chance by the whims of swamp water. A bow that still, after all these years, could take root, sprout, branch out, bud, make of its life a breathing palace of leaves. And here is swamp. Here is struggle. I think often in seeking to find meaning in these times of profound disruption and struggle and suffering, we often can find ourselves in some forms of like spiritual bypassing, not fully dwelling in the pain and the suffering and the very real death that is unfolding all around us. And being with that, I think, is a really, really important element of all of us. And stepping into that fertile, rich, primordial space in which every possibility is present. So, yeah, here is profound capacity for regenerative life. This is initiation, and it has to involve choice to regenerate, choice to step into this new world. And I love in the meditation earlier, what did we say yes to by being here? We made a choice. So it's also, I was struck yesterday on my call with Catherine and Mark that it's only when the chrysalis is formed and the collapse begins to unfold that the imaginal cells begin to be able to truly come to know one another, to work together, to communicate for the sake of the life to come. So it's really an honor to be here with all of you today. Yeah, thank you, and I see you, and I love you, and I'm complete.
Thank you, Ganga Devi. There's so much there, and I'm sure everybody has arrived with some sense of calling. I mean, the choice, as we've each made, is to be here now. And I just open that up to each of you. How do you sense initiation, or what is it that called you, or just to start the conversations with the breaths out? Shannon, yeah, please take yourselves off of mute when you'd like to chime in.
Thank you, Mark. What beautiful offerings we've had this morning. I settle gently into my heart, and I remember the initiations that I've been given. I'd like to share with you two of them. Let me close the window. We don't get many planes here, but apparently there's still some planes. So my initiations have to do with the moon. And the first one happened when I was in my teens, and I found myself in the dark on my knees beside the river. In a moment of trauma and stress, and I don't know. I followed the light of the moon across the water, and followed up, and it was the moon, the full moon, and my heart ripped itself out of my body and threw itself at the moon. And I heard my mouth say, "Help me." And those words had come unbidden to my mouth. I had not thought to ask. Now, why would I? Who asks the moon for anything? It's not my training. And yet, as I'm busy thinking about, how could this happen, I realized that I'd been helped. The storm within my body had stopped. And then, of course, I was worried about, well, how do you thank the moon? What would I have that the moon would appreciate? What can I give? And as I'm thinking about that, my mouth opens and it says, "I will speak for you when the time is right. I will speak for you." That's provided an inspiration that I've lived ever since. I've fallen off the path and gotten back on again and whatnot. But about 5 years ago, I had another encounter with the moon that brought that memory back to me, and that's why I weave them together for you here. I was trying to make a decision to accept or not an invitation to go to Europe, and I had been always known to say, no, I don't want to go to Europe, because I knew there was going to be a time when it was the right time to go to Europe. I'd been to Southeast Asia and other places, but so what happened was United Earth invited me to come to Rotterdam to be part of Synergy Hub. And it was completely out of character for who I was at the time. And I went and I visited there because we had set up a conference, and Dad came home with the invitation to come back. And so I'm going through this decision-making process, and I'm telling my mom all about it. And then I go home from her place, which is up in a building, and go down and through the bowels of the building. And as I come through almost like a birth canal, I open the door, and instead of darkness, I see brilliant white light. And what has happened is that it has started to snow while I was indoors talking and visiting. And the lights of the parking lot are shining down on this softly falling snow that has blanketed the parking lot and the 2 lanes of highway and set back into the dark buildings in the background. And it was just a magical paradise. And I walk along the building, skiffing the snow in front of me and playing. And I walk out of the shadow of the building that I didn't realize that I was in. And I look up to see the source of the light, and it is the full moon again. And that memory, "I will speak for you when the time is right," I realized this is the next step on my path. And things have been quite unscripted ever since. And thank you for listening.
I can say a little something about the process of initiation. I feel very grateful for that story that you just shared, your story. It really brings in so many of the elements that Ganga Devi was talking about that are critical to how we arrive at the threshold and how we decide to step over. And the story that I'll tell, and it's not really a story, but I hope that it's an encouragement, is that I spend the great majority of my time as many of you here know, talking to people about being in communication with their dreams, which could be considered, you know, a unique thing to do. Actually trying to find a way to talk to the world about being in consideration of your dreams. It's quite a hill to climb up. And my path to initiation for that was, must be going on 6 years ago now. I was just going about my life. Everything seemed great. I was healthy as a horse. I had a beginning but quite thriving psychotherapeutic practice. I was about to get married. Actually, in 2 weeks, I was about to get married. And I got a phone call out of the blue after a regular kind of a doctor's appointment, and I was told that I had cancer. So, boom, there's the huge shock. And I went through it's kind of hard to describe what people who go through chemo and radiation go through, but it's grueling, it's barbaric, and you go to the edge of death. So I did go there. And while I was going there, I trusted someone who told me that there was resources for me in my dreams. And so we worked together, and I slept and I dreamed, and I was in another realm most of the time, in pain and other things. And my dreams told me how to survive. And anyone can believe that or not believe that. But the experience that I had was that my dreams told me how to survive. How that serves as an initiation, and I believe I heard it in Shannon's story too, is that there are resources available to us, like the moon and nature and our dreams, that we're being given an opportunity in this pause to consider, and not just to consider, but to feel with our spirits, with our souls, whether or not those things are true without the distractions that we might normally have. So I tell that story as an encouragement to all of us to welcome the pause, to notice the bird that you see every day, or the sound that you keep hearing, or the dream that you keep having, or the moon, or the friend who keeps popping into your mind because that friend may have something to tell you. And yeah, I think I feel complete with that as my story of initiation. I really want to also say that I find so much hope, even though there's suffering in the path as you stand at the threshold. The fact that we're connecting in this way to witness and encourage is just incredibly hopeful to me, and I encourage you all to bring what you have, to take what you need, and so grateful that you're here. I'm now looking around for someone to pick on. Melina, is there anything you would share with this group? Welcome, by the way. You'll have to unmute.
Oh. Can you hear me? Yeah? Okay. This is my first Zoom call. I've never done this. So I don't know how it works, but bear with me. Catherine invited me here. Thank you so much, Catherine. I'm an artist, a fine artist, a painter. I'm a textile designer. I'm a business person. I think that's how Catherine and I know each other. And I suppose I should share my my initiation story right now, which I was just reminded of actually. I almost sort of forgot because it was about 7 years ago, and I just realized that it was an initiation. I didn't understand at the time, but what happened was, gosh, some years ago, I think it was like 6 or 7 years ago, there was a supermoon, and it blew me wide open. I stared at it and it just touched me very deeply. And a few days later, I was running on the footpath, and I saw a beautiful girl, a beautiful young girl, and she was walking by herself, and she had long flowing hair, and she was barefoot, and she looked like she was just in a state of bliss. And our eyes met, and when our eyes met, it was this weird feeling. It was as if I was looking at my younger self. It was me, but younger. And the way she looked at me was confirming that she understood how I felt, and she agreed with me. She knew, and the expression that she had on her face was like, "Yeah, go. You're on the right path." And so I ran down the path, and I turned around, and I ran in the direction of the young girl, and I see her again, and she didn't turn around, but when I saw her again, I had a vision that there were these goddesses coming from the sky, and I could not see them, but I could feel them. It was like a council, and they were healing me on that running path. They did a ceremony. They gave spin gas, like sparkling, like diamonds. Everything I looked at, the colors were so vibrant, and I felt like I had been given some sort of message of strength. And since as in between worlds, I continue to have experiences that connect to that, and occasionally I will have a kind of an image come to me, and I don't know, a dreamlike image, and I write it down, and these serve as guides for me. So a few days ago, I had one of those images came to me, and it was a group of women walking towards the ocean, the pregnant women, very pregnant, and they walk into the ocean together, and they deliver the future. And it was a very healing image for me. And then yesterday I had another image of women weaving together the social security net, I guess, through their hearts, all threads connecting heart to heart. And I believe now that women have a sacred obligation to respond in a crisis with healing and repair and connection. And really, I feel like this is my mission right now, to weave with women and do this job and repair and strengthen. Thank you.
Thank you. That was so beautiful. I'm so touched. I'm the women giving birth in the water. I'm. Thank you for sharing.
My pleasure.
Catherine, can I just respond to Melina?
Please.
Yeah, and this isn't really an initiation story, Melina, but it's what came to me at the end of what you were saying. And I host a podcast, and yesterday I interviewed a female CEO of quite a large company. And at the end of the podcast, we were talking about this period we've been through. And I said, what have you learned? And she said, I feel like the characteristics of the feminine, she wasn't really talking about men and women, but the characteristics of the feminine are what's needed in the world. And what came to me when you were talking was that actually a sense that the kind of male energy needs to sort of somewhat recede, and the female energy needs to, I don't know the word is, accede or something, but it's kind of that's what we need. And it as a man, it makes me feel what's the word? It's quite a relief. It feels like surrender, not control, and because I don't know. That's what came to me from what you said. Thank you.
I find it interesting. I'm looking at the screen, and from what I can make, there's 5 men here out of 21. So that's a nice energy. Who's laughing out loud? So who wants to share another sense of their notions of initiation? Or I know, Catherine, we had also seeded some dreaming and incubated some dreaming. And where would conversation like to wander right now? Ganga Devi, is there anything coming to mind from the stories that have been shared?
A lot, but I just saw Lena raised her hand, and I would love to hear from her.
Great.
Hi, everybody. First of all, Melina, that was in my belly. Thank you. Such a reminder. Second of all, I feel quite accidentally here. I'm coming to you, beautiful group, from Buckminster Fuller. I experienced last week, but there is no accidents. There are no coincidences. And the conversation we're having here reminds me that we are all weaving a myth, small or large, but we all just have to remember that it is so, and then it becomes so. So as you all shared your stories of initiation, I was unraveling in my head, where did it start? What was the initial mover? And I realized the importance of portals in our lives. You know, we stumble to a place where an event, and boom, here it is. You just emerge into something new, or something you were asking for, or maybe you weren't even asking for it. You didn't know what you were needing, and you got it. And I think for me it was 2010, Burning Man. Surprise, surprise, where I realized Mother Nature injected itself into me to remind me that I'm part of it. I'm of that millennial generation that knows God the best through psychedelics. And therefore, a mushroom trip was a thing that made me realize I'll never be alone. I'm part of this. That's it. And that was my domino, the first domino that started the chain reaction, from which a shift in mind happened, and the seek and seeing of women happened, and celebration of cycles happened, and realization that we must move from I to we has happened. So I realized that initiations happen constantly. We are in a spiral of time that, you know, upgrades us every time we unlock through a little or big initiation. We just need to see it. We simply need to see it. We need to recognize that the bird sometimes is bringing the affirmation. The moon always, always, always has something to say very, very clearly, and channel, and the dreams, of course. Thank you so much for that reminder, especially in these weird, quiet times where the world itself is dreaming more loudly than ever. So I am very inspired by seeing the ceremony in simple, seeing the ceremony in every day, as simple as once you guys were starting to talk, I lit up my little candle because it felt right to have the connector between the worlds when we're sharing such beautiful things that make my fingers tingle and my body respond to your words that are further than the language. So thank you. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who has either a story of what this time of initiation, of approaching a threshold, looks like in your life, in your world, or a response to what's been shared here? Anyone?
Good morning, everybody. Hello here from San Francisco. Thank you for all the beautiful offerings this morning, everybody. It's been amazing to listen to all of the different stories and sharings. And my work, oh, so let me maybe move there. I'm at my brother's house. If you can hear me okay. So work that I do is in Egypt over the last 14 years. And there's a myth that I'd like to share that has a very interesting recurring theme for this timing, and it's the myth of Sekhmet. And Sekhmet, she's a very multifaceted goddess. And just to kind of preface this by saying that my understanding of the gods and the goddesses, the archetypes from the Egyptian pantheon, they're actually aspects of the oneness divinity rather than separate. And they each hold a specific divine principle that we each have in our, facet of being human, all the different parts of ourselves. So the story of Sekhmet is that when the children of the earth have used up their resources in a disrespectful way and started to disregard nature and kind of move away from their true self and what their divine birthright, and have forgotten that Ra, who is the sun god, is so distraught and enraged that the children of the earth have fallen asleep and have plummeted their resources and killing each other and being disrespectful, etc. In his rage, he sends out his eye. One of his eyes is Sekhmet, and she comes forth. And she's a lioness goddess with a lioness head and a female body. And she is both the healer, but she's also the destroyer. So you see this in many, many cultures, this duality with many different gods and goddesses hold this power. So Sekhmet comes down and she starts ravaging through plagues and fires. She brings fires, she brings plague, because she is also enraged when she comes down and sees what's actually happening on the earth. And this is, the symbolism here is really the wake-up call that we get, these like massive wake-up calls from nature to help us and essentially initiate us into an awakening process. So the myth goes on where she actually kind of loses control of her rage, and she's ravaging both innocent and destructive people on the earth. And so the gods have a council, and they're trying to decide, how do we stop Sekhmet? She's probably going to go through all of humanity. We need to stop her now. And they decide to subdue her and pacify her and shift her into her Hathor self, which is the goddess of love and sensuality and music and joy and beauty, and that Sekhmet and her interchange in that way. So they use beer, they use pomegranate juice, and they dye beer blood red, and then when she's taking an afternoon nap, they put all these barrels of beer flooded around her, so when she wakes up she thinks it's blood and starts lapping it up, and then becomes subdued into Hathor, and through that she suddenly has, hi sweetheart, okay honey, she has an overwhelming sense of compassion, fierce compassion for humanity, and shifts into her Hathor self. So this is, so it was said that that Sekhmet would return, that her story would return, and it's interesting, the way to shift from the destruction and the ravaging is to come back into that place of joy. And what is it that brings us joy? What is it that we're wanting to see that we can each contribute? And that's sort of the message in the myth, is that, you know, we can go through that process of transformation, of initiation, from one way of being and thinking into another that is constructive and that is more unified and focuses on what is beautiful and what brings us together. And yeah, so just hope that little share from the ancient world, the mythological, seeing these patterns that recur for us, and and that we have that capacity to shift from one into the other. And Sekhmet becomes the healer when she aligns into the Hathor aspect of herself. And it's a really powerful place to kind of shift from one place, one path to another. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Dee. That was beautiful share. I also wanted to share also something. And I've been doing a lot of dreaming past few years, and have a practice, a lucid dreaming practice, where plants and trees come to me in my dreams and they tell me stories. And one of the stories that I was told that really resonates for me in terms of our theme today of initiation is this call to invitation. And in this dream, I actually go to this place where the trees and the plants are the teachers, and then the humans are listening, the students. And they're sharing of this time, and they're saying that there is a time when things will be collapsing, and the things of the old the things that are not connected to anything will be collapsing, because they're not sustainable. They're not connected to anything else but the ego, and the ego is not connected to what is true and real. And so as they're collapsing, to remember then what is true, there's this invitation, this quiet invitation in our dreams, whether that's the daydream or the night dream. There is this invitation to remember. And in the initiation is the invitation to remember that we belong, that remember that we are connected, and that the whole of reality and existence is emerging through us as we are connected. Our power is not because we're separate, we're powerful because we're connected. And that whatever it is then we create is from this knowing and this truth. And from that place, and there's a sense of celebration. There is life that is loving and living itself into existence over and over again out of the celebration of being connected to the whole. And this initiation is that invitation to remember that. And so not then to get distracted by the bickering of the ego, the argument of the ego, who has more power, who has less power, because it doesn't matter. What we need to align with is what is true, and that we are connected. And from this, then the whole of reality emerging through us and together. So that just reminded me of that dream, and wanted to share. Thank you.
Zoe?
I guess I didn't realize this as an initiation until now, just thinking about it. But something just super quick is that I'm in Montana, and all the snow is off the ground and it's all melted, and it's been beautiful out, and the sky has been clear the past couple of nights, so we've been able to see all the stars. And the other night, my partner Garrett said, "I think that's Venus up in the sky," and she's just so bright, and she's been up there the past 2 nights. And my dad has somewhat of a relationship with Venus, which is Mark. For those of you who don't know, Mark is my dad. And I don't know, it kind of was
she's been there the past 2 nights and she's been so bright, and I think it was kind of her initiation to me, just being like, I'm here for you too, because I am so far away from my family, and while they're all together in California during all of this, and being so far has been hard, because it would be nice to be stuck in a house with them. I'm sure I say that now, but yeah, it was kind of just, I think, her way of saying, I'm here for you too, and you might think you're far away from your family, but you're really not that far, because they can see me as well. So yeah, that was just what I took away from that little moment I had with Venus the other night. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Ben. I live in Hamburg. I'm also connected to Mark and Zoe through my family. They're my family, and I see them once a year. And I just I've flipped through because I'm watching this on my phone. I flipped through it, and it was like, oh my God, Zoe's here too. And it's just so funny. Just now, she told me this story about Venus, because I just moved 3 months ago into a new flat, and it's in the fourth. Some words kind of sometimes escape me, but the fourth floor of the building. And if you go one up, there's a ladder, and you can go to the roof. And the other night, 2 nights ago, I was up there. It's a big roof, and you can kind of escape up there. And we were all sitting there with some new friends that I made, just around my new neighbors and my new girlfriend. And there's a lot of new things here for me. And we were staring at the star, and we're all wondering what that is. Is that the North Star? Or, and then we took out our phones and just figured it out and talked about how bright it is. And that just, I don't know, that's funny that you just mentioned that, Zoe, and that it's, but also just for me, I mean, like I said, it's so much new things happening here. I met a new lady in my life, and through this crisis, somehow we've just been together very much, and spent a lot of time just being here, baking and being together. And this relationship has already grown into something that might have not even gone so to that point in a different time. I don't know. It's special and something to be positive about, definitely. But anyway, I'm happy to be here. It's my first time as well. So yeah. Yeah.
Hi. I thought I'd share. I haven't shared yet. I'm calling from Alberta, Canada, Parkland ecosystem. I do a lot of work with connectivity. I work with nature. I'm an ecological designer. And last week, when we were talking about dreams, I haven't been remembering my dreams, but a strong sensation or urge that keeps coming to me is to weave. And I wasn't going to talk today, but then when you started bringing weaving into the conversation, I thought, well, I should probably mention this. So I've had this real strong desire to weave. And like I live within a riparian ecosystem, so I've got a lot of different material to weave with. So I went out last week after this session, and I gathered some material, and I started weaving this thing. And there's this beautiful quote from a book that I'm reading called Braiding with Sweetgrass, and talks about how difficult it is when you first start weaving, because, and then she relates it to weaving together a community or weaving back together a community. So when you first start with these first few rows, it almost seems impossible because there's no structure yet, and you're just struggling with it. And that's exactly what it was like when I started weaving this thing. It's like, oh, this is like, I don't even want to do this anymore. Why did I have this desire? And I think we can sort of relate that to rebuilding a new community or rebuilding a new way of being right now. But then when you get to the second row, it's slightly easier, but it's still pretty darn difficult. And if you don't persevere, you're not going to get to the easier part. And so I got this far, and it is getting easier. And then I thought, well, I kind of like it like this, just like the transitional ones. I might leave this one like this, but I still have the strong desire to weave. And over the week, this past week, I've been thinking about what sort of things just thinking about weaving. And we have a big deck out by our pond. And I was thinking, oh, it's getting warm here as well. I was thinking, oh, it'd be nice to sit on that deck and weave just out in the sun. And then it's a bigger space. So I thought, well, I can weave something really big. And now listening to, especially to Ganja's poem and the idea of that murkiness, that transitional stage, then I thought, oh, what if I weave this vessel that I sit in? And it's kind of like symbolic of this will be my chrysalis or the world's chrysalis. And we go in there and maybe we each weave our own personal sort of chrysalis, and we use that for transitioning into. So I did a little sketch here. I also was thinking about weaving like a big shield as well. And I do a lot of drawing of the cosmos and cosmic spaces, and we live a lot closely with animals here too. So it may end up looking something like this. I don't know if you can see that. But however it transforms, I just wanted to thank you for sharing your weaving, this whole idea of weaving a new future, because as we know, it's much needed. And thanks for the inspiration, and we'll see where it goes from here.
Beautiful. I love that. Thank you for weaving that all together so beautifully. Yeah. Yeah. I feel called to share Venus, considering Zoe and Ben, and I've called her forth. And I imagine this could be very well taken as an initiation story. I was awoken from a dead sleep, actually, 4 o'clock in the morning, and called upstairs without knowing why. And when I came upstairs, I too looked up in the sky, and this is what came from that experience. I awoke slowly, uncertain if I should, rising to the occasion, wondering what the story was to be. Alone in the dark, I asked to receive. Looking out into the void, distant eyes peering back, Venus was there waiting, a beautiful, alluring beacon, in the twilight betwixt and between, where uncertainty seems certain. As darkness births the dawn, the solar winds brush my cheeks. A sense of calm washes over in the promise of a new day. Yet with this rising light, something goes missing, for the darkness still tugs, awaiting its eventual call. Venus invites me, with her last waking breath, to take it all in. Breathe deep, remember with each exhale, letting out what once was in. With this unexpected gift, a seed fell from the tree, then another, and still more, until I couldn't help but notice. Who are these two birds, one eating from the fruits of life, while the other watches, in contemplation, wondering? I called out, asking, "Who are you two?" Whence they replied, "I am Gnosis," tweeted one. "Iagonia," chirped the other. Yet this made no sense to me, these simple sounds. "Then let us introduce you to our friends, Logos and Eros." "To confuse you even more," they replied, chuckling as only birds can. It was Eros who welcomed me first. A warm embrace was her gift, the mother of love, the grounding of presence. Logos then stepped in, uttering something unclear. What was this word I was to hear, this notion of mind out there? Suddenly I felt off balance, teetering and twisting with what seemed anew was everything I knew. These seeds, the gifts of two birds, dizzying as digested, sent my head spinning in every which way. Eros embraced me again, ensuring I wouldn't fall. Yet Logos prodded and poked with all his might to keep me off balance. The sun soon set. as certain as the day night befell. Venus appeared once again, this time at twilight, showing the way. She winked at me and said, "Sister Earth, who am I but we? In your mind's eye, you will find the resources to grasp, to question all you can. Be still at night, awake with the light, feel the rhythms, create the rhymes, let go and wander. This is the poetry of life. Your path is to ponder." Today seems to be filled with poetry, with the sense of initiation, with wandering together and looking at the horizon, wondering where we're going. Today has been a very special day for me as I cross this threshold with you all. Thank you.
We're kind of coming up on the time where we usually close. I wanted to just offer, because last week I planted a few seeds about coming into communication with our dreams. And so I just want to offer a little bit of encouragement to all of us about doing that going forward, sharing what the dream realms, the liminal space, the thinning curtain between the waking dream and the dreaming wake is available to us. So for those of you who have an interest in beginning a practice of becoming in communication with your dreams, I'm just going to share a few quick things and then a ton of gratitude for all of you being here. When you go to sleep, it's really important to remember that what you're doing is establishing a relationship. And in the establishment of this communication, you don't want any rude interruptions. I say that to say one of the best ways of remembering what you've dreamed is to not wake up quickly, like with an alarm or rudely, but to just kind of very slowly and gently come into waking, grasping and maybe even going over, reliving whatever it is that you see or remember from your dreams. I also, it's possible if you smell the scent of lavender before you go to sleep. Throughout thousands of years, it's been established that that and also mugwort can help you come into relationship with your dreams. And then when you have an image that comes to you from a dream, I just really want to encourage you to be with it with the sense of wonder, with the sense of weaving it into your life, with the sense of initiating a conversation with something that is more. And to kind of keep in mind that the dreams do not speak to us in a language that is literal. It speaks to us in imaginal language. It's kind of interesting that the imaginal word came up. It speaks to us in imaginal language that is sourced from the collective unconscious, something that connects every single one of us. It's a, you know, it's found throughout fairy tales and religions and mythology and basically everything that we know. And so if you hold the image as not literally what that image is that you find from your dream, but what that image means to you. What does a cat mean to you if there's a cat in your dream? What does this yellow flower bring to mind when you think of that yellow flower? And begin to wonder how that association, how what you think about when you hold that archetypal image in your mind comes to play in your life. And I want to offer that if people want to come to these with images from their dreams, that perhaps it's possible that we may be weaving a dream together of the way across the threshold. And I'm happy to help anyone who wants to be helped to think about what these images might hold. We can explore it together. So that's pretty much, that is a very, very tiny little seed, but it's a new seed, and it's a connection, and it's an initiation. And I, again, just want to share how grateful I am that all of you have chosen to be here, said yes to being here, are part of weaving this story of the more beautiful world that our hearts know is possible. And I sense you all very much, and I thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine. And we're past our time, but we'll stay on it because there's that sense of, you know, wanting to just kind of download or be together as we say goodbye. So you can all take yourself, I'll unmute everybody. You can
be back in a minute.
Okay.
Or whatever you like to do. Okay. Thank you all.
Many thanks, everybody. It was beautiful.
Thank you all.
It was so nice to have you around.
Happy to be
Thank you so
here.
much.
Happy Earth Day, everyone, which is
Happy
every
Earth
day.
Day.
Thank you.
Yeah. I was supposed to be going off on a caravan today. Oh, beautiful people. Thank you so much for being a part of my reality.
Bye, Benny.
Bye, all.
Bye, Zoe.
Love
Look at Venus pretty soon, huh?
Yeah.
Melina, thank you for coming today and sharing your initiation story. That was
Thank you.
Have a good day, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
You too.
Bye,
Bye,
Zoe.
Zoe.
Bye, bye.
Bye,
everyone.
Bye.
Mhm.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.